Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I would just like to welcome you all to these African Athletics Coaches Association second webinar that we have. This webinar is on recovery because if we study the economics involved in injuries, we see that it is phenomenal. And it also, not only is the recovery linked with injuries, it's also linked to the participation of the athletes, their income, as well as that of the coaches. I'm very thankful of a very knowledgeable speakers that we have, presenters that we have tonight. We have Charles Clinton, and I will introduce each one of them as they start their lectures. He will be first. And then we also have Geoffrey Kimani, that is from Kenya. Okay, Charles is from the US, Geoffrey from Kenya, and Zelda from Durban, Ballito in South Africa. And then always, as always, we would like to really welcome Frank Dick, Professor Frank Dick. He is the current chairperson of the newly elected Coaches Commission of World Athletics, and we all know him to start. He's got such an amazing influence on the development of coaches and coaches education, and we are really privileged that he has found the time to join us, and he will be responsible if questions are asked, if he wants to ask questions, and to do the summary at the end. Thank you, and very much welcome to all of you.
My
and
privilege. Thank you.
To all our participants. We have registered 105 people, and I know that most probably not everybody would be able to participate in the webinar, and most probably will do it and listen to it later on, but we really appreciate it that you are interested in that. Now, I would like to introduce our first speaker, and that is Charles Clinton, and he is going to talk about the general theory behind recovery. And it is sometimes you talk about recovery, but people don't always understand or agree on what exactly is recovery. Now, I just want to say about Charles. Charles is very active on the coaches panel of all the World Athletics events that take place. And I've got to learn that he is such a knowledgeable person. He's coached track and field for 40 years, 25 of those for the USA as an advisor and as a USA advisor and as a lead instructor in the USA coaching education program. That is quite a feat for a person as a coach. Also, he is the lead instructor for the highly regarded track and field, the USA track and field, high performance group of emerging elite coaches in their clinics, especially for sprint hurdles and relays. He's also a mentor to many of the Americans' top developing coaches, especially in hurdles and sprints. He's a former professional football player, and presently he is involved in the management and counseling. Charles, welcome, and thank you very much for your time. Over to you.
Thank you, Rita, for your warm welcome. I'm always happy to be on panels that include people such as yourself and, of course, my main man, the illustrious Frank Dick and Jimson. So I appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully everyone can hear me pretty good. I'm getting over a little cold. But this is a very, very important area that I think all coaches that are involved in any type of sports training or coaching should have a minimal level of knowledge in. And especially in this sport of track and field, I think outside of the area of the actual workouts that we immerse the athletes in, this is probably the most important area, right? And the reason being is that in coaching our athletes, especially in track and field, we really have two focus areas, right? We're either training for performance improvement or a particular performance outcome. If we're training for performance improvement, then we're looking at tapping into the what we call the adaptive process or adaptation. It is during recovery when adaptation takes place, which is allows for the jump in performance improvement. But if there's a disequilibrium between the training that we immerse them in and the recovery that is associated with it, now we get issues, and I'm sure that'll come out, and we'll talk about that as we go on. But in order to get the performance improvement through adaptation, right, the body wants to stay in homeostasis. What we want to do through our training is to disturb that homeostasis so that we can get improvement in those specific localized areas that we're trying to focus on. Whether it's the physiological, whether it's the neuromuscular, whatever it is, it's localized to that particular area in those tissues and things there. But it's during recovery when all of this is going to take place. So it's important for a coach to have a representable level of understanding with what we call training design or training theory methodology and the sciences that are associated with it, especially in your event area, because that gives you the opportunity, right? So from a perspective, a coaching perspective, we are really concerned with recovery in 4 locations or time areas, right? It's either going to be intrasession, intercession, competition, or transition. Those are the particular areas that we're concerned with having appropriate recovery from those, right? Intercession, we're talking about workouts within the session. Intercession, we're talking about the workouts that happen from one session to the next. After competition, we're talking about that, of course. And then the transition is the period that happens between seasons, whether you're having an indoor to an outdoor or between 2 outdoor sessions, right? So we have to have an understanding of those particular areas so that we can make sure that we have the appropriate recovery to recover so that we can continue to have quality training, because that's really what we want to do, right? Is continue to have quality training sessions so that we can have the performance improvement that allows us to have the performance outcome that we want when we want it, right? So if it's performance improvement, we're looking at adaptation. If it's performance outcome, we're looking more at something like a taper, which is basically a recovery period, right? Where we're trying to get rid of all the accumulated fatigue and try to recover all the adaptive reserve that allows us to do that. So that's really, really important. But the other thing that goes along with that is that coaches have to understand what are the drivers of recovery, right? There's basically one thing that drives the recovery that's going to be required, and that's the training load. The training load drives everything, right? And the training load consists of components such as intensity, volume, density, recovery. All of those things make up the training load, with the most important being, more often than not, is going to be the training intensity, right? So a coach has to have an understanding of training design and theory methodology so that they understand training load, the science that goes with it, so that they can develop recovery. As an example, let's say if I'm doing a sprint or hurdle event, a workout, and we're going up to 80 meters, right? And I'm going 90 to 100% intensity, which I'm going to be doing if I'm sprinting. Let's say I'm going 95 to 100. Well, I know that if I'm going to that distance, then I want 3 minutes recovery between the reps and probably 6 to 8 minutes between the sets, right? That's going to give me the appropriate recovery so I can do 2 things. One is I'm getting the right stimulus so that I can disturb homeostasis, so I can get an adaptation, but I'm also providing the right recovery so I continue to train at a quality level that's going to give me the performance improvement that I want from progressive loading. So that's why things like that is important. And why we say 3 minutes, because I know I can recover the phosphate creatine system 98% within 3 minutes. It's important to understand those things. That's why coaches, from my opinion, needs to have a minimum level of understanding of the sciences that undergird their event areas, but also, and maybe more importantly, is a minimal level of understanding of training theory and methodology, because that's where the design of the training program comes in that we're going to be immersing our athletes in that is hopefully going to lead to those types of things. And I'll stop there because I know I've gone a little bit. I'll stop there and let you, if anybody got a question or you want to move on. Hopefully that's what you wanted. You're on mute.
Are there any questions that people want to ask Charles at this stage? That one of the things that I would ask Charles, if that you talk about the intensity and the volume load, when you talk about the intensity, say for example, we take a sprint training session of 450, 4 times 150 meters at a maximum intensity at 95%. What is the recommended rest time that you would say in between to ensure that you have enough recovery to do that intensity at a high enough level, but also to get the benefit of the lactate training?
Right. So that workout there, so 80 to 150 meters is what we call speed endurance work, right? It's going to be speed endurance work. So there we're going to be talking about anywhere from 10 to 12 or 12 to 15 minutes, depending on the, 8 to 10 or 10 to 12 minutes, depending on whether you're going 90 to 95 or 95 to 100, because that's a very important level of demarcation to understand. But it's going to be somewhere between 8 to 12 minutes of recovery between that so that we can continue to do the quality work. But what that tells you is that um, I think there's a misnomer that about the central nervous system, and that is mostly the cause of fatigue. The central nervous system is a lot more robust than people give it credit for. Remember, when we're doing, let's say that workout there, or the workout I mentioned before, the max speed workout up to 80 meters, we're not waiting for the central nervous system to recover. We're waiting for the substrate to recover so that we can do the work. The central nervous is fine. That's why you can run rounds like we do. Remember, back in the day, and Frank, you and Rita, you guys both remember this. In the 100 and 200, they ran 4 rounds in 2 days, right? So
Yes.
it wasn't a central nervous system in, because the central nervous system gets trained for durability during the training process, right? That's why if you look at a session load, say for a max speed, right, it's going to be somewhere from 3 to 600 or 3 to 800, depending whether you're doing a short sprinter or a long sprinter, right? We're going to start at the bottom. When we first start training, let's say we're training for 6 or 8 weeks, we're going to start at the bottom of the volume range. We're not going to 6 or 800 at the top. We're starting at the bottom, say 300 meters, and we're going to progressively load through that cycle time to get towards the top, right? Because that gives from a physiological and a neuromuscular, it gives all those systems a chance to develop durability and robustness, right? And so it's not so much a central nervous system thing that we're worried about. It's the substrates that we got to get a chance to recover. And that, so that's where those things. So for the workout you're talking about, it's going to be somewhere along in that line, right? But you got to make sure that you understand the correct volume that you get, because, like I said, if we have a disequilibrium between the training amount or the load and recovery, right? We can go to this thing called overtraining if we do it too much, right? But coaches have to understand that before overtraining, you get to overreaching, right? And most coaches haven't heard of that term, overreaching, right? Which is just short-term overtraining. With a few days rest, we can recover from overreaching. Overtraining, though, we don't know how much time, required, because it's individualized and we don't know how much damage has been done. Because remember, there's basically 3 or 4 areas of recovery we got to be concerned with, right? The physical, right, that comes from the physical stress. We've got the psychological, and in some cases, we've got the medical, right? But as coaches, from the psychological, and I'm gonna put the emotional, and I'm gonna put the emotional in with that, and mental, is that oftentimes we can reduce the amount of emotional stress and things like that our athletes develop by immersing them in training sessions, right? From a mental perspective, that gets them and teaches them how to be consistent in the work that they're doing, and to run at a consistent standard and not put too much importance on any one competition, right? And for me, that came from my background in professional football, right? Um, every practice play is important. Every play on a football field is important because one, you could get cut, but two, each one has so much importance to the outcome of a game. So the level of consistency has to be the same. And because of that, no game or none was so important that your level of stress raised so high from an emotional perspective that it just took you out of whack and cortisol started to go up and all of that. But so as coaches, we can help reduce the amount of emotional stress that our athletes feel by the training that we put them in and not allowing them to feel that one competition is so much more important than everything else.
Yeah, I've got one more question here from one of the members, and that is referring to the volume and intensity of primary school or younger children. How does it relate to high school? And do you do volume or do you do intensity or do you do both with primary school? What do you develop there and how?
Oh, it's funny you did because I wrote the curriculum for our youth level two
Good.
here in the United States for sprints hurdles. And it's funny because oftentimes many of our coaches, especially if they don't have the requisite training, um, they try to teach youth as little adults, and they're not. And we have to be careful about the training of that. But once a youth goes through puberty, now we can start to do more adult-like training types of sessions with them, right? We can reduce some of the volume until they can develop the ability and capability to handle larger loads. But the intensity still has to be there because the demands of the event don't change, right? So the intensity has to be there. What it is the volume and how we train them. So early in the youth, right, we want to be more focused on developing technique, their love for the sport, the fundamentals of the sport in that event. We want to put more effort in that instead of competitions, right? As they get older, we can start to change that relationship. But earlier youth, we want to do that. High school, when I was coaching in high school, I coached at a school called Long Beach Poly out here in California. And once our kids were into and through puberty, I trained them the same way that I would train a collegiate, right? Because they have some of the most of the things that they need on board from a biological, physiological, neuromuscular, all of that to handle that. And had great success with that. There was no problem. But you just want to be mindful because remember, everybody, there's basically three timings that people develop, right? Youth, right? Normal developers, late developers, or early developers, right? And you have to understand what type of athletes you have. If they're a late developer, then they haven't gone through puberty. So there's some things that's not available to them, and we got to be careful about like growth plates may not have fused and some other things. So anatomically and physiologically, and neuromuscularly, they may not be able to handle biologically too. But for youth, what I've the approach that I've always taken, and that many of my coaches that coached at the high school level and coach collegiate and professionally is that puberty is that line of demarcation. Once that happens, now they're able to handle more of quote adult like workouts or mature type workouts because they're capable of handling it. You just want to be mindful of how you do it from a volume perspective, but the intensity has to be there.
Understand. And also nowadays, um, children, because of the society, better diets, better medical care, reach puberty much earlier than a few years ago. It used to be 12, 14, 15 years. Now it is sometimes 9 to 12 years.
Yeah.
So would you start training, say, a young person of 10 years old that's gone through puberty? Is that not why we see so many youngsters doing such outstanding performances nowadays? Would you
It could
think that's
be.
a healthy, it's healthy or not?
Well, I think you have to be careful, right? Because we got to look at not just the physical part, but there's a mental part that goes with it, right? So we want to be mindful of all of that, especially with youth, because they're still fragile, right? And so we want to be careful both from an anatomical perspective, from a physiological perspective, from a mental perspective. So with youth, it gets a little bit more complicated. It gets a little bit more complicated. So we have to be very, very careful. We have to be very, very careful. And so from a maturity perspective, years ago, and I read some research on this years ago, we stopped looking at chronological age as the driver of it. And we looked at more things like peak height and peak weight velocity. Those were more the measures that were being looked at with respect from puberty and maturity perspective. But youth, you have to be very, very careful. But that's the biggest thing is that too many coaches try to treat youth, the young people, as little adults, and they're not. They're just not. And so we want to use adaptive type of implements, right? All those types of things come into play because really the younger they are, the more we want to do things like play games with them, love the sport, develop some of the technique and fundamentals of it so that as they get older and more stronger and powerful and more coordinated, then they'll be able to handle those types of things a little bit better. But some of those things are already on board from a fundamental perspective.
Thank you very much, Charles. If there are no other questions, we'll start moving to. Pardon?
Frank had a question.
Frank has got a question. Thank you, Frank.
Okay, just a quickie. When the coach or the athlete come to making decisions as to what's going to happen during these youth and teenage years, is it possible that there are one or two other factors or inputs that could actually not understand what we're saying here? For example, parents.
I knew you was going to go to parents. Yep.
and also, for example, Charles, the member federations themselves. Of course, I was delighted that World Athletics decided to discontinue under-18 championships.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't too impressed that the areas decided to capitalize on that and have area youth championships and junior championships and under 23s. And in my simple mind, the one that matters here is under 23, because the development years should be just for that development, not for results.
And that's the important thing there is developmental approach. And that's why I think it's so important, especially coaches of youth age athletes, that they have a minimum level of knowledge. And I think that's why USA Track and Field started the youth level too, because we wanted to design a program that was specifically targeted to coaches of youth age athletes, right? So we can give them a basic understanding because they are just different, right? And they're complex. And like Frank, like you said, the parents, right? Because, if you got a youth age athlete, when they leave the practice site, we don't know who's speaking in their ear and everything. As adults, we understand, but it's so much different with youth. And all these people play a part in that. That's why I think it's important that coaches understand that the younger they are, the less competitions they should be performing in, and the more we should be trying to just develop them. And then the competitions will come later.
Thank you. Is that answering all your questions, Frank? Thanks. Charles, thank you very much for that insightful introduction. And if there are any other questions or questions that you would like some of the other presenters to ask, we'll go on from there. Okay, our next presenter is Geoffrey Kimani. Geoffrey is a sprints and hurdles coach, a national sprints and hurdles coach from Kenya. He is also a World Athletics sprints and hurdles lecturer. And he is also USA track and field qualified in velocity and sports performance. He's also a strength and conditioning educator for the World Rugby and was involved in Kenya's Sevens team from 2005 to 2022. And also in the Uganda's Sevens side. He coached Ferdinand Omanyalu, the African record holder in the 150 meters of 14.7 seconds in 2025, and also 2024, 9.79 seconds. He was a semi-finalist and the 2024 and the Paris Olympics, as well as the Tokyo 2025. We know that athletes sometimes move on, but we are very thankful to have Geoffrey here that will talk about the recovery as he experienced it with some of his staff athletes. Thank you very much, Geoffrey. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Rita. I'm trying to share my screen. I don't know what the issue is. I can't seem to share the screen. Oh. Are you able to see it from your side? I don't seem to see my screen.
Rita, you're muted.
Thanks, Sheila. Just go, Geoffrey, to the bottom of your screen. It doesn't always show, but if you take the arrow down there, there's a share green. Can you see that?
Yeah, it shares and then comes to, I can't seem to find it. I don't know what the issue is.
Okay. Just go down there. Have you found it?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, click on it. And it will take you to a lot of documents, and you just select the one that you want to share.
All right. Oh.
You'll find most probably, there you are. There's loading your whiteboard. Okay, there it comes up.
I don't think it's here. Sorry, guys.
Okay, let's try, go again, share, and look if you can find the correct one.
Oh, no. Okay, if you don't, Jim, do you think you can help with this? Because I'm trying to share, but I can't seem to find it.
Jimson?
I mean, you got to click share, and you click on share, and then it says select a window or select an application.
The issue is my window is not coming up, so I think I'll just open up somewhere else.
Have you opened the document that you want to share?
Just open it up. Sorry, guys.
Okay, now, yeah, that will most probably help though. So if you click on share now, it will show you a lot of the documents, and most probably you'll find the one that you want to share then.
Let's see, it's opening. No, I don't think it's here. Oh, yeah. All right. Sorry, guys. It's here. Share. Is it visible now?
Double click to enter the full screen mode. There you are. Thank you.
Sorry, guys.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rita. And as you rightly put, my name is Geoffrey Kimani. I had the privilege of working with this very talented Kenyan athlete. He's not the first one I've worked with. Over the years, I've worked with a convert athlete that came from rugby sevens and became the national champion in the 200 meters and the 400 meters, and also made it to the World Championships. So straight from rugby all the way to the World Championships in London 2017. He ran the 400, had a time of 45.17. So I worked with Ferdinand for the last 2 seasons in the lead up to the Paris 2024 Olympics. And of course, recovery, just like Clinton has said, has been one of the biggest drivers of me as a coach. We start with notions. There's always, and I've been there as a young coach, that recovery is a day that you just take it easy and you sleep and you do other things. So free to engage in other things. You can go for a ride in a bike or something. These statements here can be correct depending on the phase of training you're in. But in our context, in the competitive phase, then recovery takes so many forms. The other notion is that it's a sleeping day, you just shut off and just go to sleep, or time to travel and go see your friends in the middle of your training program. Sometimes you just switch off the training plans and goals and forget what you're training at. And more recently, the athletes you're dealing with, rests sometimes is conceived to be a day that you can sit and binge on social media and video games and all that. So your body is resting, but your mind is not. So all these, like I say, the statements can make some meaning depending on the phase you are, because if you're already in off season, some of these things can make sense. When I started working with him or with the athletes that I work with, we look at performance as three-pronged. There's a physical aspect of it, which is the improvement of the biomotor abilities. Every sport that you engage in, track and field and all the sports, what you want to improve are those biomotor abilities, your strength, your speed, and all those things. And of course, there's recovery, just like Clinton said, pre-session, intra-session, post-session, and of course, the protocols that follow. If I was to go back to the physical attributes, there's something that I also picked up over the years, that most of us coaches are not involved in the warm-up and also the cool-down. So I think it's a whole new topic that probably needs to be addressed, because the warm-up and the cool-down are key in developing an athlete and making sure that they are ready for the following day session. Of course, nutrition plays a key role. Clinton has just talked about the nuances of you as a coach and what you're supposed to be knowing. I think over the years and now that there's so many specialists coming into the picture, in the World Athletics Level 2 courses, there's also a very big module that talks about nutrition. So you as a coach should understand, the basics of performance nutrition, how your athlete should be feeding prior to sessions and post sessions. So, and also the last one is lifestyle. So I put all these things together because you can have the best training program in the world, but if your athlete is not recovering, then you'll never get the results you're looking for. Or you can have the two of them, physical and the recovery, and if the athlete is not feeding well, then you have an issue. Or you can have the three of them, the physical, the recovery, and the nutrition, but your athlete is always partying after session. So you're not really gonna get the things that you're looking for. Now, just as it's been mentioned, I think I'm just going to chime through because I think preparing athletes is standard the whole world. I'm very big, and we were very big with Ferdinand on regeneration because, like it says there, fit to train, fit to play. Every session that you're preparing your athlete on builds on what you did the previous day. So making sure that your athlete gets recovered as fast as possible and is ready to go to train for the following day helps you in that continuum and makes training cumulative, and you're able to get your goals. So for Ferdinand, we had a to-do list at home, and first thing you do in the morning is wake up and of course, do a weigh-in. The purpose of having a weigh-in is to see whether we are losing a lot of weight. And if we are losing a lot of weight, then we might look at our training sessions. Probably we are pushing it too much, or whether he's adding too much weight. Probably also look at nutrition and all that. And then the urine check. Urine check is simple. Just look at the color of his urine. So these are things you'll do first thing in the morning at home. Now, the issue with Kenya is that we don't have training camps where we can all be together as athlete and coach. So these are things that ideally we teach our athletes. Some of these things that they're supposed to take charge by themselves. So after the urine check, then he has to fill his sleep questionnaire. The sleep questionnaire is simple. It's when you go to bed, did you find difficulty getting to sleep, or did you just sleep immediately? I'll share a story of what happened in Paris about the sleep issue. So those are the things that he does, or he was supposed to do the first thing he woke up in the morning. And then as he comes to training, you'll have the pre-checklist. Depending on the session we are going to have, if we are having a very tough, for example, a speed endurance session, the previous night nutrition should really mirror whatever he had as a meal should really be mirroring the kind of preparation you're going to have for the session. Because if it's a very intense session, I want to see him take some bit of carbs so that he's able to get energy and finish his sessions. So the previous night's nutrition is a key area. Also the training day, and all those are things that we ask the athlete as soon as they come to training. I had a very good ally in the spouse, because when I signed him up, they came to my house and we sat down and we had a presentation about performance nutrition. I think for the coaches on call, I would urge you to go to www.athleteplate.com. Right there, you would see some very good material on how you can work with your athletes in terms of nutrition and all that. So, of course, after going through the nutritional part, also always key for my sessions is to make sure that he's carried enough water to hydrate, and of course, electrolytes. We always had to check the weather, what is coming up. If it's a hot day, and then of course we'll pack our electrolytes and much more hydrants. If it's a cold day, of course, we also have to carry some nice warm clothes and all that. And then most importantly is that because we don't have those training camps where we stay with the athletes, we had sessions or exercises that he was supposed to do before we even start our warm-up. So even if the warm-up is scheduled to start at, say, 8 or 8:30, 8:30 is not when you're sauntering in and you want to start your warm-up. 8:30 is when the coach is ready to start the warm-up. So come in early, do your foam rolls just to make sure that the connective tissue and fascia is doing well. Tennis ball rolls on the glutes and all that. And of course, the dynamic stretches with the bands. And then after that is when now the coach takes over. And the warm-up really is specific to the sessions that's going to follow, because what you hope to achieve in the session is a continuum from your warm-up all the way to the finish. I really loved doing a lot of hip mobility, because when we did his initial tests, mobility was one aspect that I needed to really zero in on, and of course, nutrition. He came in at about 88, 89 kgs, and we thought that we could be in a very good place in terms of optimum weight if we could bring it down to about 86.8. And this entailed not just nutrition, but some tweaks in his strength training program in the gym. Working on the rep ranges that were not pushing more on hypertrophy, but working on maximal strength and not packing on a lot of muscle. So I was very big on mobility and, of course, hip mobility. And days we were doing speed, we would start with our reactive strength and then exercises that would lead us into the main session. Of course, the cool down, like I said, is something that the coach should also be take charge of. The cool down should not be just go over the corner there and do your stretches and go home. The cool down would always also be very ideally mirror what we did in the session. If there was a lot of linear running, then would work on the posterior chain and of course the lateral movement. Mostly on the grass, barefoot, we'll do like lateral drills, skips, slides, posterior chain exercises, just to make sure that you're not getting any imbalances. And of course, we do that barefoot. And then if there's a pull, we'll just do a pull dip and he'll be ready to go home. So regeneration, in the sense that we just needed him to be ready for the next session, was always a priority. And then just to chime into what Clinton said, recovery is part of the adaptation process, because we push these athletes to elicit a specific adaptation. We create stress. The training sessions that you're writing down, the training program that you're writing down, the stimulus that you're effecting on your athlete, it's aimed at stressing the athlete so that you get an adaptation that you've really geared towards. It could be in your phase, in your mesocycle, your microcycle. There's an adaptation you're looking for at the end of it. And the load itself carries so many things, just like it was said here. There's a load on the structural system, your joints, your bones and all that, your tissue. And then there's the metabolic load, the CNS and the mental. So as a coach, it's always good to know whatever sessions you're writing down, which are these systems that are being ideally being put to stress. So what we did is a combination. I think this is well covered in most level 2 classes, where you can combine these sessions. Like, for example, we could do contrast or complex sessions with ample work rest ratios, just like Clinton has said. If you are doing a pure speed session, make sure that the recovery times in between the reps, in between the sets, are ample enough for the athlete just to recover and also to get what you're looking for in that session. And of course, the volume. So for an example of that session would be like, for example, we'll do sleds and block stats. So we combine the effects of, there's a structural side of it, and then there's a central nervous side of it. We could also do in the gym, we could combine squats and broad jumps. So you see there's an aspect of some work on the structural system and also some work on the central nervous system. For our pure speed sessions, we always made it a habit that we would do our pure speed sessions when he's fresh, because those will be our quality sessions. You want him very fresh when you're doing those sessions. And then our speed endurance sessions will be towards the end of the week, heading to a rest. Now, something that's incorporated that I learned over the years as a strength and conditioning coach is we never had like sessions that are purely strength, that you go to the gym and just do strength. So, for example, after a day that we have speed, we can go to the gym and do a few power cleans and finish that session. So we combine those systems together, and then we go into a recovery. Something else that incorporated also, especially in the indoor season, because we come from a very warm environment, it was always tough when we're in Europe for him to go outside and do some training. So what we did is that we'll do all our sessions here in Nairobi, and then as soon as we get into back-to-back competitions, the day of the competition, because we only do the 60 meters, the day of the competition also becomes a day that after the competition, we can go in and do a strength session, and then it frees up a session or frees up a day for the following week where we don't really have to push ourselves. So also doing something on competition day, but this is ideally worked for him, do something on the competition day so that cumulatively you can recover cumulatively and then free up some days. So in between these training days, of course, there will be sessions that also aim at recovery. Recovery is not just your ice baths, your massages. There will be sessions that give other systems time to recover. And one of those sessions that we did would be tempos. Tempos could be on grass, depending on how he was feeling. One of the biggest issues I had is fasting in the morning would always ask, how is your body, how are you feeling? And I like, because I copied this statement from one of the best coaches around in strength and conditioning. Sorry, he's called Mike Young, and he said, the best programs are written in pencil. So we can do all these things, but if the athlete shows up tired and not able to do the session, then really that session that you're going to do will not really help him. So we'll do tempos probably on grass. Sometimes we also do it on treadmills. Of course, at times also hydrotherapy. And of course, sometimes recovery would also take the form of a mobility session, a big mobility session, a session that we just go in and work on mobility and flexibility. And this now gives us time for tissue repair, regeneration in between training days of the microcycle. So recovery ideally drives adaptation. You can have the best training programs in the world, but if the body is never really recovered, then you're not going to get the goals that you're aiming at. And of course, the principle of overload, we are all guided by the principles of training. The principle of overload is just like you say, you stress the body, you overload it, and then make sure that you do activities that speed up recovery so that the body goes into compensation, and then you're able to now achieve or benefit from the good things that come with overcompensation. One of the things I was big on, of course, is nutrition, replenishing of, for example, when you have this very strenuous speed endurance session, replenishing of glycogen, you would have like a snack that you've carried, or maybe a shake. If it's a session that required a lot of strain on the structural system, or say in the gym and things like that, would have our protein shake ready. So nutrition and fueling the body very, very quickly, especially after hard sessions, is always key so that we are chasing that recovery in good time for the next session. Hydration, of course, to quickly restore circulation and return the body to its proper functioning, homeostasis. So there will be water in between the training session. There will be water in between the days of training. Of course, electrolytes and things like that. And then special therapies, contrast baths, ice baths, and massage. There's one thing that I really wanted to do away with because he was really used to massages. And I thought a massage every end of week was not really building a robust athlete. So what we did is light massages in between a week, and then we would do a big massage at the end of the mesocycle. So a very big massage at the end of the mesocycle, but in between we'll do those small light massages. But of course, contrast baths, cold shower, hot showers were really key for us. And of course, we recommend a lot of naps during the day, 30 minutes to 1 hour, so that the body is well recovered if you're having another session in the afternoon, or just to make sure that the following day session is well taken care of. And then the big one is no gadgets at all. So this was big because the athletes you're dealing with nowadays, there's a lot of social media. So there was rules that an hour before sleep, no blue light. So just shut off all your gadgets and make sure your room is nice and quiet and cold so that you're able to get sleep and prepare for the following day sessions. And of course, to chime into what also Clinton said, ability to understand load management, transiting between high load sessions and low load sessions. So this ideally is key, because if you're training hard all the time and the body is not being given time to recover, then it causes lots of problem going forward. So in a nutshell, for me and for Ferdinand, for the 2 years that we trained, and we quite performed well, because in the World Indoor Championships, Ferdinand made it to the final, first time ever, finished 4th in the final and broke the national record twice. And then that year, we also ran 979, which was a world lead into the Olympics. So ideally for us, recovery was big in terms of helping us get into that goal. So no recovery, no adaptation. You'll just be fatigued, but your body is not going to be ready for what you want it to do. So we also are very adaptive, not reactive. Like I said, sometimes we listen to the body and adjust what the body is giving you. Preventive, not corrective. That's the reason why we did a lot of prehab exercises, so that we're not falling into choppy waters in the middle of the season. So a lot of preventive things to help us so that the body recovers quickly and we're able to achieve our goals. And also align to the performance goals. So every training phase, every mesocycle, every microcycle had a goal that we had to tick, and all these were brought together. And the most important thing is for the athlete to buy into this. As soon as they buy into this, they are really understanding in terms of the goals and the journey. And just to finish this off, it's very simple. Optimal work with optimal recovery will always give you optimal results. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Geoffrey. I mean, there are so many wisdoms that came out of that. I'm not even going to start repeating them. I just want to ask you one question. How did you balance the use of the new spikes with your training? Did you train in the new spikes? Did you train? I know you mentioned some exercises were done barefoot. How did you use the new foam and carbon spikes? Did you just use them for racing, or did you use them for some of your training to allow recovery from that? And then there's also a question from Charles.
Yeah, of course. What we did is that with the training program, and for Ferdinand, the training sessions are always written down and given at the beginning of the week. So if there's a hard session coming up on Saturday, they already knew that there's a hard session coming up. So your nutrition, your recovery should be, well vast and geared towards that big day. So even the things that you're talking about, all those interventions were things that were written down in the program. That today, after we finish our speed endurance session, our cool down is going to entail this number of laps barefoot on the grass, this number of skips backwards, this number of slides sideways. Everything was written. And so it's a good question, because even in the training session itself, for example, if you're doing the speed session, everything was known. If we are covering 20 meters of speed drills, those are written down as part of load. So it's not a matter of just hammering and finishing a session. Everything that is in that session is always accounted for and goes into the weekly load that we also had. We would put like a weekly load and a monthly load. So when we are tapering, we can tell that we are significantly bringing these things down.
Thank you. Charles?
Geoffrey, a couple of things you said that I think coaches really need to develop a higher level of appreciation for and that is both the warm up and the warm down. As the warm up is the first unit in the session, right? And that goes a long way to determining the quality of the training session that you're going to be in, because if the warm up is marginalized and it's not preparing them for the work that's to come, then the first few reps of that training session is going to be to continue to warm up so the body gets ready to do the rest of them. So now, if we wanted to do, say, 300 meters of max speed or hurdles or whatever, or jump whatever, then those first 2 or 3 reps take that volume away because it's not quality. And so you're not going to be really getting the stimulus that you really want. And like you say, the warm down is so important because that's actually the preparation for the next workout that you're going to do. And so those 2 areas are really, really important. And in one of the course that I teach, I actually have about a 20, maybe a 15 to 20 slide presentation just on the warm up, because it is so important and people don't really understand it to the level I think that they should. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
also,
Frank?
sorry, Rita.
Oh, sorry, Geoffrey, you want to answer?
Yeah. Before it skips me, very, very good question. That very good thing that Charles is bringing up, because most athletes don't understand the sequencing of the warm up itself. So you'll find a lot of neural work being mixed in the general warm up. So for the coach, this is my thinking and my philosophy, is that every session that the athlete is going through, I'm in charge of the warm up. If it's an acceleration session, I want to see the body going through the kind of movements and shapes that I'm looking for in the warm up, preparing the muscles that are going to be used in that session. So most of the athletes really don't understand a warm up is just a warm up, 2-3 laps, and I think the coach should really take charge of the warm up.
Thank you, Geoffrey, for that. Frank?
Yeah, but 2 or 3 questions. First of all, 2 very, very good presentations so far. Thank you very much. And it does occur to me that we've got 2 coaches and another one to come who don't do things by accident. They think them through very carefully. They know why they're doing them. You know what is to be done. They know how it's to be done. And they don't take prisoners when it comes to skipping the quality that goes on out there. So thank you for that. So with that in mind, a couple of points. First of all, and maybe you both could answer this question. In the morning, you meet the athlete. When I've been working with rugby teams, every player must submit, for want of a better expression, a well-being score. It measures sleep, how you feel. Do you feel recovered from the previous day? Hydration, you've both mentioned this, motive, nutrition, weight changes, and so on. Do you both have a kind of questionnaire for athletes to take ownership of self-regulating their well-being position when they come to you? I've got another couple of questions after that, Rita, please.
For me, when I coach at the high school level, I didn't. At the college level and above, yes, I did. But I will say this: whenever there's a training session or a practice session that's getting ready to happen, I watch the athlete from the first time they walk through the gate to the track until they leave off. The first thing I ask them is, how do you feel? That's what I want to know, first of all, is how do you feel? I want to know what they're thinking. But more importantly to me is because what I don't want to do is give them a reason not to want to train or practice. So I'm just going to ask them how you feel, right? But more importantly is, like Geoffrey said, I'm in charge of the warm up. Because invariably, if the coach allows the athlete to do their own thing, they're probably going to do something wrong. And then it's going to show up in their mechanics or technique, and you're going to wonder where that came from. Because I sure didn't teach it. But I need to make sure that the warm up, because as we talked about, it is the first unit in the training session. And it's probably just as important as the workout itself.
Absolutely.
I need to make sure that that training session is going to be doing well. But I'm not just watching it to make sure that they're getting ready for the workout. I'm watching to make sure how their movement is, because that's going to tell me a whole lot as to what their recovery was from the previous workout and whether they're ready for this next one by their movements. So for me, those are some of the things, the tangible things that I'm looking at as to that. Now, we will have had conversations about nutrition. I don't get into supplements, but from a just nutrition, for an example, they know, especially the quarter milers, either the 400 to 400 hurdlers, 300 hurdlers, and 800-meter sprinters, is that they know that from a restoration perspective from carbohydrates, within 60 minutes, they need to get 1 to 1.5 amount of calories per gram or kilogram of body weight back in them within 60 minutes. And they know they take that number and multiply it by 7 and 10, and that's how much they need in the next 24 hours. And that's given to them in paperwork, and their parents understand it. So there's some things that we talk about before, but I didn't have a questionnaire for them at the high school level because, again, some of them was at different levels of where they were from a developmental perspective. But at the collegiate level, yeah, and actually at the collegiate level also, I actually had a nutrition come and meet with the athletes and meet one-on-one with them, both in the group and one-on-one, to develop a nutritional program for them, which included sleep, because I want them to get 8 to 10 hours sleep. College is hard, you know. And then the professionals had that too. It's just that, you know, when you become an adult, people think that they sometimes can take a little bit more leisure, but you have to get them to understand that they have to be a professional about their profession also. So for me, that's the way I approached it.
Thank you. Geoffrey?
Yeah, just to chime in on what Charles has said. Yes, I have that kind of a questionnaire, and mostly have the athlete take ownership. But having said that, if you're in a training group, there's also the physiological aspects of the athlete that you're dealing with. Some athletes take much more time to recover. Their bodies are quite different from others. So the session, I've canceled sessions. I've been to a session and I've looked at the athlete, just like Charles has said, walks in, you can tell he's not well recovered, he's fatigued, or maybe there's soreness that are still remaining from the previous day. And that session really that I've written down is not going to make any meaning. So we find something else to do. We go and find something else to do outside the track that is going to be close to what we are trying to achieve. So it's not a one size fits all. Those questionnaires help us so that we are able to see where the athlete is at any given time. Also give them ownership about the journey that we are going through, because we want to bring in a culture of high performance mindset into it. From where I come from, of course, nutrition is a big issue because nutrition is quite expensive around here. To get a good meal, proteins and all that is quite expensive. So I was lucky because Ferdinand is well taken care of by the contract that he signed. And what I did is that I made sure that he didn't really like feed on junk. For example, at night, if you would find out that he's losing some weight, and for him, when he's losing weight, it means he's losing muscle. So what we did is would look for a nice slow release protein shake that you would take at night, so that when the body is doing its metabolism at night, it has something to take charge in the body, not take all the lean muscle that you've taken through the whole season to build. So it depends on athlete to athlete, and of course the questionnaire is there. And Frank, those are things that I really carried from rugby. And you know, rugby boys, you have the fat boys, you have the big boys. So some of those are the things that we carried over, and we keep learning and you know, transferring them into these other sides.
Well, thanks for that. Just the two other questions. One's quite short, Rita. You said barefoot, and of course in South Africa and Kenya, I guess you've got some really nice grass tracks where you can work on at that. And I'm pretty sure Rita will know where I'm coming from on this one. That seems to me to be a very intentional part of training. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely, because of course on a hard session, the foot really takes a big beating. So we want that massage effect. We want that effect very, very easy on the structural system. And just to correct you, In Kenya, it's the opposite. In Kenya, soccer is big, track is small. So we don't have a lot of grass tracks. What we have is very good soccer pitches. So we'll do our work on the tartan and then hop onto the grass pitch when the groundsman is not seeing and before he sees us, we're out. But of course, the effect of that is that barefoot means we are able to have some good work on the connective tissue, some good work on that massaging kind of effect, and preferably we always look at wet grass that is a bit wet, so that our regeneration starts immediately.
Okay, my last question, Rita. A long time ago, I was with the British team, I think it was Toronto, for the World Indoor Championships. And it was the first time I'd ever seen a sprinter, in this particular instance, Ben Johnson, after the semi-final, he went straight to the weights room and he pumped weights for quite a bit. Now, in these days, everybody thought this is crazy because this is going to make you tired and so on. But is this setting the scene? Does this set the platform for the athlete to be recovering, so that the impact of the weights during recovery is setting them up for a special performance when they go into the track? So over to you guys.
Frank, can I real quick, Rita? It's funny, Frank, we was talking about something, but one of the things that a really good friend of all of ours said to me one time is that a trainer says, I have to do this work. A coach says, why do I have to?
Yeah.
Right. Because our training plans are structured, but they're not rigid.
Yeah. Good man. Good point.
Okay.
Geoffrey?
Yeah, for the strength part, of course, we can also do it as a primer, very lightweight, just prior to the athlete going to the warm-up. I like doing very light dumbbells, like a dumbbell snatch, or very quick huddle hop, things like that. But in the context of doing a strength session after competition, like I said, I put it in so that all those recovery is cumulative. He recovers from the competition and he recovers from that session. And if the following week we are going to take like 2 days off, well and good. We are going to take 2 days off because we've already taken care of the strength part, and then 2 days off, a bit of shakedown, and then we are ready for the next competition.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you very much. Now, it really is a big pleasure to welcome Zelda Visser, our last presenter. She is one of my very big loves, a Pilates and a yoga teacher, but she's also a myofascial and release therapist and also a fascia fitness practitioner. Now, Zelda works with the integrated movement, basics and assessment with manual fascial treatments, which is very important. Her focus, or her professional focus, is on understanding, and that is very important, understanding how the fascia movement and the nervous system interact. And I think that especially asked her to refer to how the women recover, which is slightly different to the men. She is based in Ballito in South Africa. And also towards the end of her presentation, I would just like her to also refer to the fascia movement dome that is now one of the big parts that we refer to during recovery in her presentation. Zelda, welcome, and I am very honored that you are prepared to do this lecture for us. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Rita. I really appreciate it. So there's a lot of coaches around, but I am coming from recovery through my connective tissue and fascia lens. So I normally land up with the people that train too hard, that's been injured, and they don't actually have a way forward. So I want to focus now mainly on this presentation about women, because there's two things that plays a major role in the recovery of female athletes. And the one is hormones. And I don't know if we knew or had this information a while ago, but now we know that the hormones actually influence the fascial system. And the connected tissue have hormonal receptors that affects the collagen, the elasticity, and the tissue stiffness. So if the nervous system or the cortisol hormone is constantly in motion, I want to say, that will have a negative effect on recovery. So for women to recover, we have to look at the hormonal fluctuation during the month. So there is a part there where they need to, I want to say, build and work harder, but they need longer time for recovery because of the hormones that plays a role in the recovery. And I did a 12-week course with Bill Parisi from the Fascia Academy, International Fascia Academy. And in that, they actually proven, meaning that they did some tests on how the collagen repair in recovery. And it's not only through rest. It is omnidirectional movement that helps the fascia to recover so that the athlete can have better access to the sliding of the muscle in the fascial system. So for the other thing for female athletes is hypermobility. And I think hypermobility doesn't only feature in female, but mostly in female. And that is basically the organization of the fascial tissue around joints. So what I found with working with people in injury, because that is what I do, although I do come from movement as well, but I mean, mostly in my therapy room, I have injuries. And what I found is that it's almost like the body goes out of alignment because the mobilizers are so overtrained and the stabilizers cannot keep the bones in line. I don't know if you understand what I mean by that, but you look at the tensegrity model, and the tensegrity model, Thomas Myers is quite famous for his tensegrity model, what pulls on the one side, so either something is pushing or something is pulling. And if somebody is quite hypermobile, the problem that we have there is a lack of control. Because I find that people, females especially, that's got hypermobile joints will have like weak ankles, but extremely tight calves. And from the tight calves, we get the Achilles tendon injury. Or they have extremely hypermobile hips. And then the thoracolumbar fascia in the back, the upper back of the body actually tightens to help to stabilize the hip and the pelvis. So wherever the hypermobility lies, the fascia almost accumulates or the fibers reorganize themselves to make more fibers, and that causes that tightness, and that takes the body out of alignment. Because in the end, for any athlete to perform at top level, we are looking at balance. And I'm talking fascia now, because the fascia changes the mechanical behavior. So the tissue reorganizes itself according to the load that is put on the body. And maybe that is why when the extreme athlete or the competitive athlete, extreme maybe not the right word, only rest, it doesn't give them the opportunity to reorganize the fascial fiber. Because the fascial fibers can take 48 hours to settle. But it's not to say that they should not rest. They should just add something else to their recovery. I'm talking recovery on the day that they do less. And another thing that I've realized is that people do not always understand that the fascia fiber do not follow the muscle fiber. The muscle fiber runs linear, and the fascia fibers runs in a web. It's omnidirectional, it's multidirectional. So for any athlete to be able to bring the body back into balance, we need to access the fascia fibers. Because if you can imagine a rope that is stuck in glue. That rope will not be able to move unless the glue is more mobile. And when that glue, which is the fascia, becomes more mobile, the muscle can actually slide much easier in that container. And the most important thing for female is to look at stability and mobility balance. And if we talk about stability, I mean, that is a whole nother day on talking about how do we stabilize, because what we need to do is, or what we know from the fascia is that fascia takes long to change. But although it changes slowly, the change is more permanent. So although you're going to take a little bit of time to get to stimulate those fibroblast cells into the joints that need stabilizing, it's going to stay for much longer. So it's got different properties to the muscle cells that we train for mobilizers. So that is what I think the most important for female athletes is to understand the difference between the balance between mobilizers and stabilizers, and then the stiffness that you feel in tissue in areas that you do not understand, because when the injury or the niggle moves all the time, that's a first sign that the fascial system is out of alignment. And the other thing, to hydrate the fascial system is not necessarily only water, but it needs light compression. So I think Frank mentioned the athlete that went to the gym after his session. That is such a great way of loading the fascial system and actually hydrating it, because fascia hydrates with compression. Doesn't have to be a lot of compression, but it definitely hydrates through compression. And if we get the fascia to slide in mobile tissue, the muscle will be a lot more effective in recovery and in movement, because the hormone system is an individual system for each athlete. And I think, I don't know, I think Phelps said that is when you train, you listen to your body, but when you compete, you ignore it. And I sort of agree with that, because if you listen to the little niggles, then the major injury should not happen. But when you start listening to the little niggles, that is important that you do the right thing to get rid of that niggle, and not only rest and do the right movement, so that you will be able to get back onto whatever you like doing or whatever is your speciality to perform at your top level. And that was my whole thing about starting this Fascial Movement Dome, is to actually have it as an educational hub for people to have another tool in their toolbox. Not to say that anything else that they're doing is wrong, but they need to take the fascial system in consideration in training and recovery. So we will launch the Dome on the 2nd of March. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we will have a whole month of giving free classes for people to come experience, so that they prepare their bodies a little bit better for the intense training that they have to do to compete at their maximum level. So I don't know if there's any questions or...
That is absolutely awesome. And I think that so often we do not think to add, as you say, another tool to our box. And we look at different ways, and it is all the different recovery ways and all sorts of things. But we do not think about how we can compress the fascia to help that recovery. And that, I think, is most probably the most valuable lesson that I have learned tonight. And I also understand now why Ben Johnson did it for the first time, I know
Yes.
that answer because he rehydrated. And as you say, it's not for everybody, and he found it fantastic and it worked for him. How awesome was that explanation? Frank?
And I think the most important thing, I think, is that to remember that the fascia shapes the movement. And the quality of the movement determines the recovery. And I'm also a huge believer of barefoot training in the sense that if we train our feet the way we train the rest of our bodies, it will be adaptable to whatever surface we have to compete on.
Frank? Frank, you're on mute.
You know, one of the things we focus on is that most coaches can deal with 80% of the technical development, right? But it's the great coaches who can coach the difference, the next 20%. And it seems to be, and I remember Jan Tiriac, tennis coach, saying to me that every technique is a compensation. And I get that. But what I'm coming round to is that how athlete specific is recovery? We would normally focus on load difference. It sounds like there is recovery difference. Biochemistry, heart rate, these were considered to be the measure of recovery for the next session and so on. But what I'm getting from this is that the fascia could be dictating, you've said it yourself, could be dictating the recovery, and therefore, coming all the way back to the first presentation, the adaptation, our ability to adapt. How, here's my simple question from as a coach. How do you, what are the metrics that tell you about the status of fascia?
Sure. Okay, so that is quite a difficult one. You know, it is through movement that you will actually see where the restriction lies. That's what I find. So if I treat somebody, say for instance, I treat a runner, I will ask them to send me a little clip of the video, and I will see through the movement that something, and I'm talking something meaning tissue, is pushing or something is pulling. And if you look at it from that technical point of view, then you will understand that this person maybe needs a bit more, most of the time, and I'm not saying always, agility. And if we look at the agility, we're looking at small micro movements like bouncing, rebounding. And somehow that's got a great effect on athletes because it's almost like shaking the system back into a fluid state. But it should not be intense. Fascia doesn't like pressure because fascia can apply 2,000 pounds of pressure per square inch on the body, and we cannot force through it. You cannot, because fascia's best friend is the nervous system. Hope this answered your question.
I think so. I do appreciate it is a tricky one because Geoffrey will sort of resonate with this. When you're working, for example, with front row forwards in rugby, they will never get into position if they don't have extraordinary dorsiflexion in their ankle. And is this fascia, or is it just neuromuscular tenderness kind of stuff? What is it?
Fascia.
Okay.
Fascia. 100% sure about that. And yeah, well, I don't want to speak about rugby because, you know, I stopped watching it because I can just see all the injuries and all the things happening there. But yeah, definitely fascia.
Okay.
Okay, next question was Charles and then Geoffrey. Charles Sansel. Geoffrey, let's go to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Zelda. Mine is just an inquiry. Of course, I do a lot of foam rolling with the massage stick, and then the warm up will also entail some bit of jumps, a bit of bouncing. So, what is your recommendation? Is it an overkill if I'm starting with foam rolling and still incorporating some work that touches on the fascia in the warm up? Is it too much for it, or is it okay?
So the one thing that I just want to tell you about foam rolling, it's great if you can just stay away from the ITB. Whoever said that you should roll an ITB, he's great at marketing, that guy, but he definitely doesn't understand the fascial system. And I've said it a million times, and I will say it again, you cannot roll the ITB. The ITB band is a fascia band. It's part of the support system. You have to look at something else to find mobility in the ITB. I don't want to go there now, but what I want to tell you, it is great to foam roll. It's great to do anything, but you must remember, fascia solidifies when it's cold. So when the fascial system starts to warm up, it becomes fluid. So my recommendation is to have just do it maybe in a different sequence and first do the bouncing, like micro bouncing, even omnidirectional, multidirectional, whatever the word is that you want to use. Then the fascial system will warm up. Then you'll get the great effect of rolling with the foam roller. But the foam roller, if you roll it, it needs to be slow and not fast. Otherwise, you miss the tissue, because the fascial tissue can take up to 2 minutes to react. So it needs to be slow, and it needs to be in different directions, so you do not go in a linear way. Otherwise, you might feel, oh, great, but you're not really getting to the tissue. And I think in a warm-up, that is important that you get to the fascial tissue for the muscle to be able to start performing after the warm-up.
Oh, wow. Charles, you had your hand up. Is there a question you would like to ask?
No, just a comment. This was really very knowledgeable. I learned a lot of things in your talk about the fascia and some of the other things. It's really, really, really good.
Thank you
so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Rita, can I just ask one question? I meant to ask it earlier on, and maybe it's too big to deal with now. Maybe we'll leave it to the future. But in the old days, athletes got their instruction and their advice and their rudder and compass from the coach. But now all they have to do is switch on the telephone, and they're getting all sorts of information on social media and so on. And it's not all bad, but it's not all good. And just for our three superstars coaches here, how do you propose to manage that?
I would like to answer that.
Go ahead, Zelda.
Can I go ahead? Yeah. So I always say, and that is again the motivation of the Fascial Movement Dome, is if you understand how, from my point of view, the fascial system works, and you tap into something like that, and first of all, you have pain, whatever they tell you to do to release fascia, and you have pain while you do it, you're on the wrong avenue. Try to follow someone else, because fascia doesn't like pain. If you want to release the fascia, you need to go slow, and you need to listen to what your body tells you. So it is a very difficult thing to control, or we will never be able to control it. We need to educate the people, and that is what I feel strongly about. Not only the coaches, but the athletes, the guy that goes to the gym, the guy that does Pilates, because most of the injuries happen in movement or during training. So education, to me, is the key.
And should we be saying to our athletes, or putting into the minds of, not so much the athletes, the coaches, should we have a module on critical thinking very early on in a coach's development and education?
100%. 100%. And also become more aware of the fascial system. I mean, everybody put it under the door, for such a long time, but it's been around for a lot. There's a lot of knowledgeable people around that knows how the fascial system reacts in movement. But I think people need to understand more how it reacts in movement, under stress, hormonal, even, athletes fly all over the place. What does that flight do to the fascial system? Everything influence. The fascia is a sensory organ. It's actually officially been classified as a sensory organ.
Frank, I'm like Zelda.
Yeah.
I think education is so key. And for me, some type of structure, because the internet is both good and bad. It's good because information is ubiquitous and everybody has access to it, but it's bad because anybody can put anything out there. And unless a coach has a certain level of discernment capability, then they won't know whether what they're getting is good or bad.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a number of times. And then you start going with wherever the wind blows you, because you have no foundation in anything.
Yes.
You have not anchored your knowledge based anywhere. And so now you just fly with whatever comes out. And at the end of the day, it's affecting the athlete the most.
Yes.
So I'm like Zelda.
I think there's maybe one or two generations now. They might not say it, but they like shortcuts. They don't want to put in the miles. And I always remember John Wooden's a quote I've kept in my head forever, is that if you keep practicing the tricks of the trade, you'll never learn the trade.
Very true. Very true. Okay, and now we get to the part that I'm going to ask Frank for a short summary. But before we go there, I just would like to thank again the technical part. Without Jimson Lee, we cannot do without. He is always doing, I can ask him anytime. He's always smiling. He's always helpful. And the other day he told me, it's not that difficult. It's like being a cook, putting all the new ingredients together. Well, I'm not that type of cook, but I'm very glad he is. Jimson, thank you very much. And to our speakers, Frank will thank them. And I am blown away with some of the knowledge that has been added to my limited experience about what we call a recovery and adaptation, especially to the fascia that we discussed last. Thank you very much. Over to you, Frank.
And a great job by you, Rita. Not only tonight, but the fact is this would not be happening without your endeavor. And also, it wouldn't be happening if we didn't get my very good friend, Jimson Lee, standing up to be counted when we come to these things. So big thanks to you both. Thanks, Jimson. And I know you must be hurting because Canada's struggling in the Winter Olympics at the moment, but that's just the way it goes. Yeah. Okay, very quickly. First point that I picked up is it's critical to understand that adaptation takes place during the recovery. And although we didn't mention it, that means not just physical, not just mental, but emotional. Right? All three require a program. At the athlete performer end, the performance demand is almost year-round now. We've got athletes who are competing to earn their income. We've got athletes who are putting in the development and performance stuff so they can prepare for the major championships, and then there's the major championships. And this has actually made it very, very, very difficult for our coaches now, because if we're talking about recovery, this is a different variation of that skill to plan that in. And now, comes back to our experience, I think, Geoffrey, we're really talking about tactical periodization now, not just straightforward periodization for the year. The cyclic nature of training programs requires a rethink, kind of because of that. The purpose of the teen years, and we did touch on this, and we've done it before, and I think we have to hammer this one again in the future, is preparation for the peak years. Member federations, parents, coaches, and athletes must see the teen years as preparation oriented, not results oriented. Because if you're looking for the results and the performance in the teen years, in my simple mind, you're going to end up squeezing all the juice out of the orange, and you're going to be in trouble in the peak performance years. And just to remind our viewers here, Rita, 65% of the medals in the Olympic Games and World Championships are won between the ages of 24 and 28. 80% between 22 and 30. The other 15% is the other 15%. But this is such an important concept for us to get our heads around and to educate parents, member federations, because I'm pretty sure the coaches get it. I'm pretty sure you guys get it completely. But we have to take stock of how we take people through these development years. Coaches must have an agreed program, pre-training competition and post. As you, I think, two of you said the same thing. Your competition begins in the warm-up area, right? It's not in the stadium. The whole thing, mental, physical, and emotional, starts there. And when we're over, there has to be, it's not just an afterthought to warm down. This should be very carefully structured. And I think all three of you actually touched on that. We mentioned social media is an advantage, and it's also a danger. I think we really need to have a kind of a plan ourselves for this, but we need to be passing on to the younger coaches coming through the ability to think critically, because sometimes a drill will come out there and they'll think, oh my goodness, oh, and that superstar athlete's doing it, I'm going to do it and it'll be great. Yeah. And I just don't think, I think we're missing the point here. Coaches must have an agreed program pre-training. As I said, this one, morning well-being checks. We haven't had a discussion about this. I think we should maybe actually look at this a little bit more carefully as coaches, because of the change to this year, the sense of a year-round competition cycle. We spoke about being barefoot and the values that come with that. And actually, I think the first two coaches were talking about building that into the program. And Zelda very, very succinctly explained why that is actually fundamental. We better get that stuff, deal with that. Strength or power before a competition, between rounds, and after. That was Ben Johnson. Oh, you'll all remember, of course, that was when Ben Johnson broke the world record for the 60 meters. He broke it on that occasion when I was watching him doing this weird thing, I thought, of doing strength work between the semi and the final. Then we moved, really important people, and I had to write this down, female recovery differs from male recovery. Now, the closest I ever got to understanding that, Zelda, was when I was working with two athletes, a decathlete called Daley Thompson and a heptathlete called Kim Hager. And I discovered that they were both doing very similar strength programs, but Daley stopped his earlier before a major competition than Kim did. Because, and I only had the data from my own athletes, female athletes seem to lose strength quicker than men when they're going through a high pressure program. And you've now cast a torch on that one. Is this neuromuscular or is it fascia related? We spoke about coaching the difference. Each one of the athletes that we coach has got unique compensations. All techniques are compensations, but that also comes down to recovery. It's not just that they have a unique way of developing their own program or their own technique because of these differences that we have, but, and this is another light you lit tonight, Zelda, they also recover differently. And really, as coaches, we'd better get our heads around that. Well, listen, Zelda, thank you. Fantastic stuff. Geoffrey, good man. Always good to see you. And I don't know if are you going to be in Torun for the indoors?
Pardon me?
Are you going to be in Torun for the World Indoors?
No, not this time. I'm not involved with the team.
Okay, well, I'll maybe catch you later on in the season. Charles, always good to listen to you. Probably one of the deepest thinkers that we have around on the whole area of speed. And finally, of course, apart from Jimson, outstanding, thank you. And you're a gem, Rita. Thank you very much indeed for what you are doing for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank, and to Zelda and Geoffrey, Charles and Jimson. It really is appreciated, and we will contact Zelda. Will contact you about the dome and advertising and helping you with that, putting on the place and onto the African group. It is fantastic news for us. It's fantastic for development, and I really appreciate your time and effort. Frank, thank you very much for your summary, and all have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you so
again,
much.
everyone.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you.